For more on this, let's bring in Isaac Wright, Democratic strategist and the former executive director of Correct the Record Super PAC, which supported Hillary Clinton in 2016, and Mercedes Schlapp, a GOP strategist and former spokesperson for George W. Bush. All right, so healthcare, tax reform, unfinished ahead of recess, Mercedes. Maybe should they call recess off? What do you think?
Well, I know some Republican senators are calling for the senators to get to work during August. The chances of that actually happening, I think, is slim to none. I think you're going to see these Republican leaders say that they'll take it into serious consideration. But the reality is we've seen this happen before. Last year, the Democrats basically wanted to not have an August recess to deal with the issues of opioid crisis and the Zika virus. That didn't happen. These politicians like to go home in August. This is when they fundraise. So I could foresee them trying to cram as much as they can before the August recess. But I got to tell you, Sandra, it's a very ambitious legislative agenda, and there's pressure on for Republicans to pass not only the repeal and replace of Obamacare and this budget resolution in the Senate, but also to then look ahead into fall when they've got to work on tax reform. All of this when you have lifting the debt ceiling and funding the federal government in 45 days of a legislative days left.
It's no doubt an ambitious agenda, Isaac. And to Mercedes' point, there are some taking this rather seriously, like Senator Dan Sullivan, Republican from Alaska, saying, quote, I think absolutely we should truncate or cancel recess. We have a huge agenda. I think we can get a lot of it done, but what we don't have is time. We can make more time. And Senator Steve Daines, a Republican from Montana, says Congress has no business taking a recess when the people's business remains unfinished. Isaac?
There are a lot of Republicans who are in a rush to take away Americans' health care. The latest version of TrumpCare would deny 27 million Americans their health care. Over 20 million Americans would face lifetime caps on coverage. When you're at your sickest, oops, you're already capped out for the most that your insurance will cover for your lifetime. There are a lot of Republicans who are in a rush to get that done because they know when they go home for August recess, they're going to hear from their constituents, this is a bad idea. America can't afford it. Their districts, their states,
well,
their
the American people in the middle class can't afford Obamacare when you've had the premium skyrocketing in so many states where you have over 41% of these counties in 2018 estimated that will only have one insurer. So, I mean, there are so many flaws with Obamacare, and there needs to be an opportunity to try to fix the problem. And then when you have the Democrats in the Senate basically saying, we're going to grind to a halt the work in the Senate, we're going to hold these talkathons, we want to protest, instead of trying to find solutions with Republicans, it makes it very frustrating.
Well, this conversation right here,
amongst those problems you're citing is the fact that we have the lowest record of uninsured Americans, the lowest number of Americans without access to critical health care in the history of records being kept. That's one of the symptoms that you want to change. We can change. We can work under the hood and fix the problems with Obamacare.
That you're
That's what
having
Democrats
right here
have proposed.
Is the very common disagreement that is being had right now, which is leading to concerns about the time and the deadlines coming up so quickly here. I want to toss to Mo Brooks. For all the talk about Democrats getting in the way and the president not being able to get to his agenda, Republicans not being able to stick to their agenda, here's Congressman Mo Brooks saying, hey, we've passed a lot of legislation. Look at this.
The House, during the last session of Congress, we passed over 500 pieces of legislation to address various issues that the Senate did not even bother to have a Senate floor vote on. So unless the Senate changes the way in which they operate, I'm afraid you're going to continue to see this kind of deadlock without the kind of improvements that the people sent us to Washington, D.C. to implement.
Mercedes?
Well, I think it's complicated when you have, for example, in the Senate itself, you need this in so many of the pieces of legislation, 60 votes to get something passed in the Senate. In the case of for example, repealing and replacing Obamacare, they're using budget reconciliation, which only requires a simple majority. And yet within the Republican Party, there are the factions, whether it's conservatives versus moderates, and trying to get them on the same page is difficult. So I think that you have more of a unified force almost in the House, even though there are the factions there as well. And in the Senate, as we know in the Senate, it's a very slow-moving institution. And to get anything done, it does require, in most of pieces of legislation, bipartisanship.
All right, Isaac?
Republicans aren't ready to govern. Ultimately, they control all three major branches of government. They control the majority of governorships and the majority of legislatures in the country.
Isaac,
The U.S. House, the U.S. Senate.
60 votes.
They're in charge, and they're unable to find 51
the reality
votes,
is you
as
need
Mercy
60
just
votes.
mentioned.
You need a majority, or you need bipartisanship. And according to the Democrats, last time I checked, all they're doing is resisting and protesting. It'd be better if they could just get to work.
So,
First
Isaac,
of all,
what do
that's
you
not
say to
true.
that, though?
We all know good and well that
they're
Chuck
just
Schumer
resisting
sent a
and
letter
getting in the way.
today inviting McConnell and the Republicans
As you are in this
to
discussion.
show up at the old Senate chambers and
All
talk
right.
with Democrats about
All right.
health care. We
Isaac.
all know that the Democrats have
And
come
then
to
the
the
next
table.
day he's saying that he's protesting. So what is it?
That's
All right.
not
Which
true.
is-
We're going to have to leave it there. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
And then they ended so nicely. All right.